So a lot of people wonder, what is homesteading? But that's a question that's kind of different for a lot of people. So I've asked those friends what homesteading means to them.
Being a little bit more self-reliant. I personally don't think there's anything where you can be 100% self-reliant, at least in our situation, but trying to do as much as you can, choosing to make more things from scratch and baking and cooking instead of buying like the prepackaged food or eating out. It's about getting back with nature and having an appreciation for all the hard work that goes into our food system here.
I think it's a way of living. It's always also a way to be more ecological for me because we are living away from big centers and agricultural zones, and that means a lot of transport to bring food here. I think homesteading is more ecological because we cut that transport. We also put what we want in the soil. We can be organic if we want, can be almost organic. We know what we do with our soil. Also, it's a way to be more ethical with your animals because compared to a big farm, your animals have a great life here. They only have one bad day.
Homesteading is freedom. For years, I was a prepper before I even knew what homesteading was. I'd prepare for the winter. I would prepare for bad weather. I would prepare for a bad season or a bad deer hunting or year. Because of that, then I learned what homesteading was, and I just took it to that next farthest degree. Because if you take prepping to its eventual end, you will end up on a homestead. I get to do what I love to do and take care of myself. The consequences of other people out in the world, though they affect me, I've lessened their impact on my life.
It started as self-sufficiency as much as possible, but now it is more a lifestyle of growing food to the capacity that you can with the land that you have. Like bake food from scratch, cooking, preserving your own food, or preserving food that you can find locally. So I find it's more a lifestyle of self-sufficiency that will never happen. So a journey to as close as possible.
It's kind of that journey towards self-sufficiency, being as self-reliant as possible. It's not just the end result, but it's the entire journey along the way, whether you're, raising your own food in the way of animals or growing your own vegetables and fruit and that kind of stuff. It's kind of that all encompassing where you're doing your best to strive to be as self-reliant, self-sufficient as possible. Where I think some people might say it's, you have to have so many acres, you have to do this, or I think it comes down to, being able to grow your own food, raise your own food, and just being able to put that food away and stock that food away and just become more self-reliant.
Well, homesteading is different, I think, for everybody. You can have somebody that is in the middle of nowhere, off grid, has a few animals, and just is self-reliant, all the way to a small scale farm. The basic principles behind homesteading, I think, is raising some animals, gardening, preserving, maybe a little bit of land, but I've seen urban homesteads too. So it's what you make of it. For me anyways, because I have people and friends that I consider homesteaders, but they don't have anything as to what I have. Right now, we don't have animals because we're building. I still find us to be homesteaders. The basic principles I think are there is learning to be more self-reliant, maybe raising some animals, gardening, preserving. For me, it's different for everybody.
There's so many reasons as to why people decide to homestead. Let's see what Lynn from Bucket List Homestead had to say about this.
When we were homesteading, we didn't know that's what it was. I just thought, I'm baking from scratch. I'm growing. We're a military family, and we had very small property. We're in the military housing we lived in, but I still had a small garden because I wanted to at least eat a little bit fresher vegetables. And I've always canned. I canned when David and I were first married, and things like I'll say we probably started homesteading. We realized that's what we wanted to go a little bit bigger with it when I got diagnosed with cancer the first time. And we realized, what do we want from life? And David did a list at my very first chemo treatment. He said, what do we want to do and have when you're better. The first thing on the list was we finally wanted our own home with enough property to have the gardens, have chickens. I wanted chickens so bad. Room for the kids to grow. And we just wanted a slower pace of life, just stop and realize what was important to us. And that in homesteading, that was it for us. That's what was important to us, and that's what we wanted.
Here's what Marilene from Little Homestead by the Beach had to say about this.
I have a picture of me while watering the dandelions in diapers. I began really young to take care of plants and garden, and began to be like a drug for me. When I moved out from my parents' house, I needed each winter in February, March to clean the soil and do seedlings. I needed that. I needed to smell the soil and feel it with my hands. It's like a drug. So I continued to gardens on my apartment balcony, in pots, community gardens, never stop. Also, when we bought the house here, I was more checking for potential land for a garden than anything else. Also for a cold room. I wanted those two things. If there were no potential cold rooms or garden in there, I didn't want that house. So we found the perfect house for us. The couple who sold it to us had rabbits in their other house, and the day we moved in, they gave us a rabbit to a welcome gift. In the winter, we put it in the greenhouse that was already there. Got 3 more rabbits. It took many attempts to have now a nice hutch and pen, outdoor pen for them, but now we have six rabbits to breed, around 50 in season.
Here's what Tracy from Tihan141 had to say about this subject.
Back in the early 90s, I had just gotten married. I moved to Penn Yan, New York with my wife. I was working at Burkett Mills flour mill. We started a garden. Wendy had always canned once we were together. My parents had always canned and gardened and did everything they could, just because, I mean, they were raising 4 of 6 kids that were still at home on a very low budget. But we didn't know it was called homesteading. Penn Yan, New York, we were living in a small apartment, but we got permission from the landlady to start a garden behind the parking lot.
I started my research of homesteading. I just gave birth to Cedric, so that was about 7 years ago. We were looking for ideas for me to stay home to somewhat replace my salary. After studying a little bit, looking online, I found a couple of channels on YouTube. I was presented with an idea of homesteading. We wanted to grow our own food, be a little bit more self-sufficient, and save on the grocery bill. Took a while to get there, saving on the grocery bill, because we built from scratch our homestead. My husband has food intolerances, and it was easier just to grow my food and make my own stuff.
Let's see what Darren from the Horhaven Farm has to say about this.
I want to say it was like 2019. We were able to purchase the property that we were living on because we were renting it from Bridget's sister. We were renting part of the house, and she wanted to get a new house, build her own place. So we were like, hey, we can help you there because we'll buy the entire place from you. So that's when our journey really started. We were doing bits and pieces before, where different situations where we would garden or have some chickens or that sort of stuff. I think 2019 was kind of the real start of it. That's when we got the cows, we purchased the property, we went headlong into it.
Angie from Me and Your Acres also had an answer to that question. Let's go check it out.
I think I've always wanted to homestead, so that is my why. I've always wanted to be in the country. I've always wanted to, and I've been fascinated by doing things for myself, being as reliant on myself as I can. I've always been fascinated also by making things for myself instead of always relying on other people, other companies. We didn't get started, unfortunately, until later in life, 2019. So I would have been 42 when we started. So just 4 years ago.
Obviously, if we do it, there's a lot of good reasons. So what's our favorite thing about homesteading?
I hope, even though our kids were a little bit older by the time we finally got to do it, a little bit bigger the way we wanted, they were still little, but not as little as I wish they had been. I hope they're realizing that. I know they definitely have better appreciation of their food. Like they definitely see how hard it is to have food, to grow food, to raise food, to cull that food yourself, to prepare that food. They definitely have a better understanding. And if that's all that comes out of this, I am like happy, because I really want them to appreciate just how much, farmers work for us to feed us. David and I have always been close, but I feel like this lifestyle of homesteading has brought us closer. I really do. I think there's nothing like building a fence or culling a chicken or plucking a chicken to make you realize how well you get along.
I would say it is that you have your grocery store next to you. Grow around, I would say about 70% of our food here. Like last year, we grew around 350 pounds of fruit and veggies and 100 pounds of meat. We don't buy veggies at the grocery store. And when we buy meat, it's because we want something else than rabbits. And in the summer, you need an ingredient right next to you. You go for it. You go in the garden, you take what you need, and that's it. And in winter, well, we learn to preserve everything we have. We use our canning and everything.
On any given day, I can waste ammunition into a target. I can walk through the woods, 20 acres worth of woods, and it's mine as long as I stay on the 20 acres. The freedom, and this is going to sound weird, but I can literally, from the front of my lawn that's closest to the road to the back of my property, to the edges of my property, I can literally pee anywhere. I could drop my trousers and go pee anywhere. And if you can see me, especially in the summer when the leaves are on, then you're trespassing. I just have that freedom and that seclusion that just really means a lot to me.
The moment I pick my first tomato off the vine and it's ripe. It seems super simple to think about it, that you go outside and you look at a tomato plant and the tomatoes on it. But there's like so much process. Like you grew that from seed, you took care of it, you uppot it, you talk to it, you transplant it, you maintain it, you prune it, and then you see the first fruit. And then you have to say, okay, so the fruit's going to take this amount of days. And then the fruit is big enough. And then you're like, okay, so it's going to take this amount of days before I can eat it. But that process of it all just make it so worth it. I just say tomato, but it applies to everything. But it's one of my favorite things to harvest. The first fruit. Definitely. I always bring salt in my pocket now.
There's a few different things that we really enjoy. One of the coolest things is the security from having our own food stocked away for a year, for 6 months, that kind of thing, where we don't have to worry at all about not being able to get into town, or food prices jumping way too much, or power outages where we're not able to do a grocery shopping or something like that. I think one of the things that gives us the most joy from the homestead is our animals, being able to go out and pet the cows, the happiness that brings us, the joy that brings us, the amount of stress relief that gives us is phenomenal. Just, I don't think we can put a price tag on how much joy our Highland cows bring us.
For me, I love the gardens and I love creating. So for me, it's the gardening and then the connection. I think that too. I feel way more connected to the earth, to animals, to people. Even though I'm removed from people, I feel a lot more connected to them, and even to God. So connection is for me the biggest thing.
Let's be fair, most homesteaders are a little bit different. We're being seen as being odd, being different, being weird even sometimes. What do people really think about homesteaders?
15 years ago, when we were still living in military housing, and I would can and I would quilt and crochet and make, do a lot of that stuff, craft with the kids. Some friends or family thought, I was old fashioned. I had a friend who used to call me Martha Stewart. It's like I don't have her money. But she meant it with love. She's like, because she's like, I wish I could do that. And we'd get a couple of funny looks, and especially I would get a lot of funny looks from a lot of women because I wasn't a professional. I didn't go to college. I was happy being a homemaker and a stay-at-home mom. So I got a lot of weird things for that. I'll say in the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of people who've reached out to me, friends from the past, people I went to school with, how many of them have said, we want to start having chickens. I want to start canning. I want to start growing some vegetables to can. Where would I start? I love what you guys are doing. Could you give us any advice? It has blown my mind how many people in the last few years have reached out to me. And my family, especially my parents, my mother loves it. And my mother says to my father all the time, where does she learn this? How does she do this? Because I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up with it. I had grandmothers who canned and had gardens and things, but it certainly wasn't like in my home with my parents. They were both working, people and stuff. And yeah, so it is amazing though to see the shift in the last few years of how many more people don't. For a long time, people thought we were crazy. Now people are saying, "How do we do it?"
They kind of look me weird because we speak French here, so they don't know what homestead is. I try to explain them that's kind of a little farm and everything like that. Some of them still look at me weird because they don't understand why I would just not go to the grocery store and try to raise everything here. But some are excited about that. We often barter with them. We can't do everything here. We barter rabbits or veggies, mushrooms with something we don't have here. Also, my boyfriend is a college professor, and he often use our rabbit stories to explain things in his classes.
A lot of them get it because I live very rural. When I met my new neighbors, I stopped in to say hi as they were working on leveling the land to put a pad in to put their trailer on. I said, "Yeah, I live right across the road from you here." He says, "Oh, you're the off-grid guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the off-grid guy." And we got talking about it. And it's funny because they're new to homesteading. They now have ducks, chickens, and geese taking up the homesteading lifestyle as well. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, my brother and my family, they kind of understand. Trevor doesn't agree with the reasons that I do it, but he understands.
Now, the answer is completely different than it was 7 years ago. So when I announced I was going to quit a 10-year career to become a stay-at-home mom, people call me nuts. But I did have some people that said that they believed in me, I was able to do it. And now, 7 years later, they kind of see that I'm not going to go back to work. And they see the good, they see the bad. Most of them say it's awesome. They only think that I work too much. Like it's too much intense during the summer months. And then there's no time for, well, what they call like vacation and other stuff. So I don't really have negative, but there's like borderline negative comments.
People find it interesting. There's people who have misconceptions about it. There are people who find it fascinating. There are others who, why would you do that kind of thing? So I think it's a mix of who you talk to and what their thoughts are on it. Some people admire it, the ability for us to, we haven't been to the grocery store for 4 years now to buy meat. We don't buy very many vegetables from the grocery store as well. So some people really find that fascinating and admire it. Other people think we're crazy because they don't think we maybe have the variety or selection that we might get from a grocery store, but we do. We get so many different views and opinions in that from different people. Some people think we have like a hobby farm, that sort of thing, where we just have animals to have them and pet them versus providing all our own meat. I think there's still a large misconception on what we do, and talking more to people, you find out the different opinions as well. So I think some people really like living in the city where they're able to go out and go to a different restaurant every night or that sort of thing. Got more more options available to them. However, for us living on the homestead, it's like a vacation for us.
I get a mixed reaction. So I get, man, you're living my dream. I wish I could do what you do. Whether it was just because right now we're building a homestead. So is either they wish they could move to the middle of nowhere and start over, or when we even lived at the cabin, you're still living my dream. Or the other reaction I tend to get the most is, man, that's cool, but it's not for me. And I've been referred to as pioneer woman. In both, like, they're both in joke and in good humor, but I've always had that since I can remember. It wasn't a surprise to people that know me well, but for people that maybe coworkers that I used to work with, they were like, oh, that's cool, but it's not for me.
As much as we can talk about the subject all day, it turns out that there's so many different things about homesteading that is drawing a lot more people into this subject. There's something about harvesting your own food that just can't be really explained unless you've done it yourself. In the end, everybody's got their different reasons to do it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Everybody has different opinion about life in general and why we let society control our lives. A lot of people believe that homesteading is a way to get out of that little pre-designed aspect of our lives that defines who we should be as human beings. A lot of homesteaders will homeschool, not everyone, but a lot will. A lot of people will grow their own food simply because they want to have their own hands in what they're actually harvesting. A lot of people will also be working a lot on their own lands. They'll have lands, they'll have animals. They like to know where their food comes from. If you ask me, homesteading means so much that it can't really be explained with just one word.
I tell them to do it. I tell them to take the step and do it. Life is too short. If you don't like it and it doesn't work out, that's okay. But at least then you know. But you probably are going to end up falling in love with it. And you need to be careful of chicken math or any math when it comes to homesteading. It tends to multiply. You think it's hard work, but it's even harder than you think. And I think you need to be realistic. You can do this with little money. It's hard. It definitely is harder. Like Dave and I were saying, a tractor would make a world of difference for us in homesteading if we could get a tractor, especially as you get older. Some things get harder, and we don't want that to be a reason why we can't continue. So I will say that you certainly don't need to be a millionaire, and homesteaders are the best make do people. Like, we will do what we have to, and we'll use what we have to make it work. But I'm going to be honest, extra money helping sometimes would be true. So if you do have it, I think you would be wise to make sure you figure out the best way to use the money. And I'd also make sure you realize that as good a fence you think you're building, build a better one. Because it's never as good as you think it's going to be.
I would say go for it. Don't hesitate. Go for it. Big and small, or you will do a burnout really fast and you won't keep it at it. Go for it. Try a small garden. Chickens are a nice entry to a homestead with animals. Also, it's good to do your research before, but at one point you have to do it. Try it, because if you do research years and years, you'll never begin and you'll never see what you can do. And it's not the end of the world if you fail at something. Also, if I could add, for gardening, I would say do your own journal for seedling times, harvest time, the way you plant things. Your place have a microclimate, and you can play with that. Don't think that a calendar for your zone that gives you date will do the job. It's not necessarily the case for you. Do your experience and write it, because you won't remember it the next year. Write also your wins and loss and do your own calendar.
I would say start now, start in earnest, make up your mind where you want to set your limits for this year, this summer, this planting season, this year, because we are now in the times that I started homesteading and preparing for. Prices are skyrocketed. The food we buy in the store, I don't trust a lot of it. I eat a lot of it, but I don't trust a lot of it. the world is going downhill real fast. We are now in the time that I began preparing for back when I was a prepper storing 5-gallon pails of shelf stable food in Mylar bags. So start now, start soon, but just decide, take it in small steps. You will not do everything all in one season. And the self-sufficiency, total self-sufficiency is a myth that we chase. You're going to need to build community if you ever want to get there, but we chase it nonetheless, because if I'm more self-sufficient today than I was yesterday, my day is a success.
Don't let the Instagram perfect homesteaders, gardeners ruin it for you. There is the good, the bad, and ugly in every situation. In homesteading, it's a lot of work. If you buy land or buy a home, it is complicated to get started. Start small and then add slowly. And then don't forget to listen to your mind and listen to your body. If there's signs of weakness, if there's sign of like being tired, exhausted, depression, listen to your body. And second thing, if you want to go into homesteading and you don't know where to start, build a community first, either online, or if you have the privilege of having like a community garden. Or I actually got a lot of good feedback talking to the people in the nurseries. People that works in nurseries, especially like elderly people, like semi-retired or retired people, they work seasonal. They used to have gardens. And they gave me so many good insight, and I had fun talking to them. And I find out that they live local and they gave me tips and tricks. So building a community is always good, because you're going to really see firsthand the good, the bad, and ugly of their situation. And you're going to have somewhat a good idea what to prepare yourself for. But it is a lot of work, but also very rewarding.
I'd say just start. If you want to go towards this lifestyle, if you want to start working towards it, just do anything a little bit every day just to start getting you there. Whether you are in an apartment or in a house, or you're already making the transition or something, just continue to do something every day to get you closer to that. I've used the saying before, where if you put a fence post in every day for a year at say 10 feet, by the end of the year, you're going to have what, 3,560 feet of fence? Wait, how many days are there? 556? Anyway, you get the idea that putting in that much fence in one day or a 1 week might sound brutal. But if you do one fence post a day, the amount that you will accomplish is phenomenal.
I think that going to a job to live in a house that isn't something that you're in all the time, paying all these bills and just, slaving away, to me, that's what's crazy. But to each their own. And if you want to do it, start somewhere. Start from where you are and start somewhere. I think I was held back a very long time because I didn't think I could do it. And somehow every day we're doing it.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Don't hesitate to share, like, subscribe if it's not already done. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.